Get out of my line! You don't belong in first class, Lauren Gibbs hissed, her voice slicing through SeaTac's terminal. Your kind always tries to sneak in with fake tickets. Dark skin, cheap clothes. Think I'm blind? I'm canceling your passes. And security's coming to toss you out. Move! Now! Her venomous words stunned Kayla and Mason Wright, their valid tickets ignored, their dignity crushed before a gaping crowd. This raw prejudice wasn't just a rejection, it was a public shaming, igniting a fire that would burn SkyPulse Airlines to the ground. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join us in demanding justice. Let's make every journey fair together. The morning sun blasted through the towering glass walls of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, bathing the bustling terminal in a harsh, unrelenting glow. Kayla Wright, 14, stood at the SkyPulse Airlines first-class counter, her heart pounding like a drum. Her dark eyes darted nervously, clutching a sleek first-class ticket, her first ever. Beside her, her brother Mason, 16, exuded calm, his fingers scrolling through his phone, but his sharp gaze missed nothing. The terminal buzzed with the chaos of travelers, rolling suitcases, hurried announcements, and the clatter of coffee cups. Kayla adjusted her backpack, her camera dangling from a strap, ready to capture their trip. This was supposed to be a special day, a flight to New York for a family event, booked by their dad, a big shot in the business world. At the counter, Lauren Gibbs, 30, stood with a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her SkyPulse uniform was crisp, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. She glanced at Kayla and Mason, her eyes lingering on their dark skin, their casual hoodies, and Kayla's braided hair. "Economy check-ins over there," she said, pointing to a crowded line across the terminal, her voice clipped and dismissive. "We're first class," Mason replied evenly. Holding up his phone to show their digital boarding passes, his tone was steady, but Kayla caught the slight tightening of his jaw. She'd seen that look before, when kids at school made snide comments or teachers assumed he wasn't gifted. Mason was used to proving people wrong, but it never got easier. Lauren's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing with a flicker of doubt. "Those look suspicious," she said, barely glancing at the screen. "Step aside. I need to verify." Her words cut like a blade, sharp and deliberate. Kayla's stomach twisted. She'd faced microaggressions before, store clerks following her, neighbors clutching purses. But this was different. This was raw, unfiltered prejudice, right in front of a crowd. "Verify what?" Mason asked, his voice still calm but edged with steel. "The passes are legit. Our dad booked them through your executive portal," Lauren scoffed, her fingers hovering over her keyboard but not typing. "Executive portal? Sure. Kid, wait over there." She waved them to a corner like they were stray dogs, her attention already shifting to the next passenger. Kayla's cheeks burned. She glanced at Mason, whispering, "Why's she doing this?" Her voice trembled, a mix of anger and hurt. Mason squeezed her hand, his eyes locked on Lauren. "We've got this," he murmured, discreetly tapping his phone to start a recording. Kayla noticed his thumb hover over an app, a secure messaging system he'd built himself. Mason was always prepared, always thinking 3 steps ahead. The crowd around them began to stare, some whispering, others pretending not to notice. Kayla's camera felt heavy against her chest, a reminder of her dream to capture truth through her lens. She wanted to snap a photo of Lauren's smug face, to freeze this moment of injustice, but her hands wouldn't move. Instead, she watched as a white family, a mom, dad, and 2 teens, approached the counter. Lauren's demeanor shifted instantly. "Welcome to SkyPulse First Class," she chirped, her smile genuine now, her fingers flying to process their tickets. No questions, no verification, just warm hospitality. The contrast hit Kayla like a punch. They didn't even show their tickets, she muttered, her voice barely audible. Mason nodded, his eyes narrowing. Keep watching, he said, his fingers typing a message on his app. Dad, SeaTac, Gate A12, racial profiling, recording everything. Kayla knew their dad, Troy Wright. Wasn't just any parent. As CEO of Pinnacle Ventures and a major shareholder in SkyPulse, he had the power to shake things up. But right now, he was miles away, and they were alone. Lauren's radio crackled, and she spoke into it, her voice low but audible. Security to A12, possible issue with passengers. Kayla's heart sank. Mason, she's calling security, she whispered, her voice rising. Mason's calm facade didn't waver. Let her. It'll make this easier. But Kayla saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers gripped his phone a little tighter. A burly security officer appeared, his badge glinting under the terminal lights. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed, his presence a silent threat. The crowd's whispers grew louder, and Kayla felt their eyes like spotlights. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Mason's steady gaze anchored her. We're not moving, he said, loud enough for Lauren to hear. Check the passes. Do your job. Lauren's face reddened, her polished facade cracking. You're holding up the line, she snapped, her voice rising. If you don't step aside, you're not flying today. The security officer took a step closer, his hand resting on his radio. Kayla's breath caught, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a flight anymore. It was about being seen as less, as unworthy, for no reason other than who they were. Mason leaned forward, his voice low but firm. You're making a mistake, Lauren Gibbs, he said, reading her name tag. A big one. Lauren froze, her eyes flickering with unease. For a moment. Kayla thought she saw doubt in the woman's face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Lauren turned to her computer, typing furiously, as if to erase their existence from the system. Kayla Wright's phone screen glowed with the chilling notification, their first-class boarding passes, valid just minutes ago, now read, canceled. Her heart sank as she showed it to Mason, whose dark eyes narrowed at the timestamp. 9:07, Right when Lauren Gibbs had been typing furiously at the SkyPulse Airlines counter, the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport terminal buzzed around them, a chaotic symphony of rolling suitcases and garbled announcements. But for Kayla, the world had shrunk to this moment of betrayal. The security officer loomed nearby, his presence a silent threat. While Lauren's smug expression burned into her memory, Mason's voice was low, almost a growl. They're trying to erase us, Kayla, but they don't know who they're messing with. He slipped his phone into his pocket, the recording still running, capturing every word, every glance. Kayla clutched her camera strap, her fingers itching to document this injustice, but fear held her back. The crowd's stares felt like needles, and she wondered if anyone else saw what she did. A system rigged to push them aside. Lauren leaned over the counter, her voice dripping with false patience. Your passes are invalid now. Move to economy or leave the terminal. Her words were a slap, each syllable laced with the assumption that Kayla and Mason didn't belong in the sleek, velvet-roped world of first class. Kayla's cheeks flushed, a mix of shame and fury. She opened her mouth to protest, but Mason raised a hand, signaling her to stay calm, before they could respond. A new figure approached. Greg Sullivan, 45, the floor manager, his SkyPulse badge gleaming under the terminal lights. His face was set in a scowl, his graying hair slicked back, exuding authority. Lauren straightened, her confidence returning as she briefed him in hushed tones. gesturing toward the siblings. Greg didn't even glance at their boarding passes, now voided on Kayla's phone. "You're holding up the line," he barked, his voice carrying over the terminal din. "Economy's that way, or you're out." Mason stepped forward, his posture unyielding. "Our dad booked these through your executive portal. Check the system before you kick us out." His tone was steady, but Kayla caught the fire in his eyes. Greg scoffed, crossing his arms. "Executive portal? Don't waste my time. Kid, you don't belong here?" The words hit Kayla like a punch, echoing Lauren's earlier dismissal. She glanced at Mason, expecting him to falter, but he only smirked, typing another message on his secure app. "Dad. Escalation at A12. Manager involved. Passes canceled." Kayla's attention shifted to the counter beside them, where a white family, 2 parents and their teenage son, had just arrived. Lauren's demeanor transformed instantly. "Welcome to SkyPulse First Class," she chirped, her smile warm, her fingers flying to process their tickets. No scrutiny, no verification, just seamless service. The boy, about Mason's age, caught Kayla's eye and looked away, uncomfortable but silent. Kayla's throat tightened. "They didn't even show their passes," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the double standard. Mason nodded, his jaw tight. "Keep that in mind. Kayla, it's evidence." He adjusted his stance, facing Greg directly. "You're making a mistake. Mr. Sullivan," he said, reading the manager's badge. "Check the system. Our passes were valid until your employee canceled them." Greg's face reddened, but he didn't budge. "You're not flying first class," he snapped. "Step aside, or security will escort you out." The security officer took a step closer, his hand on his radio, and Kayla's pulse raced. She felt exposed, like a spotlight was burning through her. The crowd's whispers grew louder, some passengers pulling out phones to record. Kayla wanted to disappear, but Mason's calm resolve anchored her. She noticed an elderly woman, Dorothy Ellis, 70, in a wheelchair nearby, watching the scene with sharp, knowing eyes. Dorothy's silver hair framed a face etched with experience, and her hands gripped the armrests tightly, as if she'd seen this play out before. Dorothy wheeled closer, her voice steady but tired. "Same thing happened to me last month," she said, addressing Kayla and Mason. "They held me up for verification while others walked right through. It's not about the tickets. It's about who they think you are." Her words landed like a stone in Kayla's chest, validating her pain but deepening her anger. Mason glanced at Dorothy, nodding slightly, as if filing away her story for later. Kayla's mind raced, connecting the dots. Lauren's quick dismissal, Greg's refusal to check, the canceled passes. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, a power play to keep them in their place. She glanced at Mason's phone, where the recording timer ticked on, capturing every damning moment. "What do we do?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the terminal noise. Mason's eyes flicked to the security officer, then back to Greg. "We stand our ground," he said. "Dad's on his way. This isn't over." He opened the SkyPulse app, digging into the error logs with a speed that surprised Kayla. His tech skills, honed from years of coding, were his weapon. "Look at this," he said, showing her a system log. The cancellation wasn't random. It was manually triggered by a user ID tied to Lauren's station. Greg, oblivious to Mason's discovery, radioed for additional security, his voice sharp. "We've got a situation at A12. Send backup." Kayla's stomach dropped. More officers were coming, and the crowd was growing, their phones now a sea of flashing cameras. She felt trapped, but Mason's steady presence kept her from unraveling. Dorothy spoke again, her voice cutting through the tension. "You're not alone. Kids, I've fought this fight before. Hold your heads high." Her words gave Kayla a spark of courage, enough to lift her chin and meet Lauren's gaze. Lauren flinched, her confidence wavering for a split second. Mason Wright's phone buzzed in his hand. The SkyPulse Airlines app revealing a second cancellation attempt on their boarding passes, this time linked to Greg Sullivan's manager account. The timestamp, 9:09, matched the moment Greg had stood before them, dismissing their claims with a sneer. Kayla's eyes widened as she peered at the screen, the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport's chaotic hum fading into a dull roar. The terminal's glass walls reflected the crowd's growing curiosity, their phones flashing like fireflies, capturing the standoff at Gate A12. Kayla's heart raced, the weight of the injustice sinking deeper. This wasn't just Lauren Gibbs' prejudice, it was a coordinated effort to erase their place. "They're doubling down," Mason whispered, his voice icy but controlled. His fingers flew across his phone, digging deeper into the app's error logs. Years of coding had made him a master at uncovering digital footprints, and he wasn't about to let SkyPulse bury them. "Lauren canceled our passes first, but Greg sealed it. They're covering their tracks." Kayla's hands trembled, clutching her camera strap. She wanted to snap a photo of Greg's smug face, to freeze this moment of betrayal, but her fingers felt frozen, paralyzed by the crowd's stares and the looming security officers. Greg Sullivan, oblivious to Mason's discovery, stood with arms crossed, his radio crackling as he awaited backup. Lauren Gibbs hovered behind the counter, her earlier confidence replaced by a nervous glance toward her manager. The security officer from earlier was now joined by a second, their presence tightening the noose around Kayla and Mason. The siblings stood their ground, but Kayla felt the terminal closing in, the air thick with judgment. She glanced at Mason, searching for his usual calm, but even he seemed strained. His jaw clenched as he typed a new message. "Dad, Greg Sullivan's involved. Second cancellation attempt. Hurry." Kayla's gaze drifted to Dorothy Ellis, the elderly woman in the wheelchair who'd spoken up earlier. Dorothy's silver hair glinted under the terminal lights, her sharp eyes locked on Greg with a quiet intensity. "This isn't new," Dorothy said, her voice cutting through the tension. "SkyPulse has a history of picking who gets to fly and who gets left behind." Her words hit Kayla like a revelation, stirring a memory she couldn't quite grasp. There was something familiar about Dorothy's tone, a mix of pain and defiance that echoed in Kayla's own heart. Mason paused his typing, glancing at Dorothy. "What do you mean? A history?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. Dorothy wheeled closer, her hands steady despite her frail frame. 10 years ago, a woman was denied boarding on a SkyPulse flight. They called it security concerns, but it was her appearance they didn't like. She died waiting for another flight." Kayla's breath caught, a cold dread creeping up her spine. She opened her phone, her fingers shaking as she searched for the story Dorothy described. The search results loaded, and Kayla's world tilted. A headline from a decade-old Seattle Post article stared back. "Tech mogul's wife denied boarding. Dies awaiting medical flight. SkyPulse cited for bias." The woman was Sylvia Wright, their mother. Kayla was only 4 when Sylvia died, too young to understand the details, but the pain had shaped their family. Troy, their father, rarely spoke of it, his grief a silent shadow. The article detailed how Sylvia, battling a sudden illness, was flagged as a risk and barred from a critical flight, her dark skin and urgent demeanor misread as a threat. Kayla showed the article to Mason, her voice barely a whisper. "It was Mom." Mason's eyes darkened, his calm facade cracking for the first time. "They did this to her too," he said, his voice tight with anger. "And they're doing it again." The connection was a gut punch, linking their current fight to a wound that had never healed. Kayla felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back, fueled by a new resolve. This wasn't just about their tickets. It was about a system that had stolen their mother and now dared to erase them. Dorothy's expression softened, her eyes glistening. "I knew Sylvia's case," she said, her voice heavy with memory. "I was at a protest outside Sky Pulse's headquarters after it happened. We demanded change, but they swept it under the rug. I've been watching them ever since." Kayla stared at Dorothy, her words a lifeline in the chaos. The elderly woman's presence felt like fate, a bridge between past and present, urging them to fight. Mason's phone buzzed again, a reply from their father. "On my way. Hold tight. Pinnacle team activated. Troy's power as CEO of Pinnacle Ventures, which owned 60% of Skypulse, was their ace in the hole. But he was still miles away." Mason resumed his digital sleuthing, cross-referencing the cancellation logs with Skypulse's internal protocols. "There's a pattern," he muttered, showing Kayla a log entry. "Dozens of passengers flagged for verification this month, all with similar profiles. This isn't random." Kayla's mind raced, the pieces falling into place. Lauren's dismissal, Greg's complicity, the system logs. It was a machine built to exclude, polished with corporate smiles. She glanced at the crowd, now a mix of curious onlookers and amateur reporters, their phones recording every move. The security officers stepped closer, their radios crackling with orders, and Kayla felt the pressure mounting. But Dorothy's words echoed in her mind. "Hold your heads high." She straightened, meeting Greg's glare with defiance. Greg, sensing the crowd's attention, raised his voice. "This is your last warning. Leave the counter, or you're out of this airport." His words were a dare, but Mason didn't flinch. "You're the one who should be worried," he said, his voice steady. "You just canceled valid passes under your own ID. That's traceable." Greg's face twitched, a flicker of unease breaking his stony facade. The Seattle-Tacoma International Airport terminal pulsed with tension as Priya Sharma's camera flashed, capturing Greg Sullivan's fleeting unease. Her press badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a silent promise to expose the truth. Kayla Wright, 14, stood beside her brother Mason. 16, their canceled boarding passes a digital scar on her phone. The revelation that Dorothy Ellis, the elderly woman in the wheelchair, was Priya's mother had shifted the air, turning their personal fight into a public reckoning. Dorothy's words, "Tell their story," echoed in Kayla's mind, fueling her resolve despite the security officers circling like vultures. Mason's phone buzzed with a new message from their father. Troy Wright. At SeaTac. Gate A12, Pinnacle team in tow. Kayla's heart leaped. Troy, CEO of Pinnacle Ventures and majority shareholder of Skypulse Airlines, was no ordinary parent. His power could bend corporations, and he was coming for answers. Mason's eyes flicked to Greg, who was barking orders into his radio, oblivious to the storm approaching. "He's got no idea," Mason muttered, his voice a mix of anticipation and anger. His recording app ticked on, capturing every damning word. Lauren Gibbs, behind the counter, fidgeted, her earlier smugness replaced by nervous glances at Greg. The crowd at Gate A12 had swelled, passengers and onlookers forming a semicircle, their phones a constellation of lenses. Priya moved with precision, her cameraman trailing, documenting the siblings' defiance and the airline's arrogance. Kayla clutched her camera, her fingers itching to join Priya, to capture this moment of truth. But fear still lingered, fear of the security officers, of the crowd's judgment, of being seen as trouble. The terminal's glass doors slid open, and Troy Wright strode in, a force in a tailored Navy suit. His presence commanded silence, the crowd parting as he marched toward Gate A12, flanked by 3 aides in sharp blazers. Troy's dark eyes locked onto Kayla and Mason, a flicker of pride cutting through his steely resolve. Kayla felt a surge of relief, but Mason's posture stiffened, ready to hand their father the evidence they'd gathered. "Lauren Gibbs, Greg Sullivan," Troy said, his voice slicing through the terminal's din like a blade. "You work for me. I own 60% of SkyPulse Airlines." The words landed like a thunderclap, and the crowd gasped, phones swiveling to capture the moment. Lauren paled, her hands frozen on the counter. Greg's scowl faltered, his radio slipping slightly in his grip. Priya's camera zoomed in, her lens unyielding. "Mr. Wright, there's been a misunderstanding," Lauren stammered, her voice cracking. Troy raised a hand, silencing her. "No misunderstanding," he said, his tone icy. "My children were denied boarding based on your assumptions. Their passes were canceled, first by you, Ms. Gibbs, then by you, Mr. Sullivan." He turned to Mason, who handed over his phone, the screen displaying the system logs with Lauren and Greg's user IDs. Troy projected the logs onto a nearby digital billboard, a Pinnacle Ventures trick that turned the terminal into a courtroom. The crowd murmured, reading the evidence, 2 cancellation attempts, timestamps, and user IDs. Kayla's breath caught as she saw their story laid bare, the injustice undeniable. Priya's cameraman panned across the billboard, then back to Greg, whose face was now a mask of sweat and panic. "You violated company policy and federal law," Troy continued, his voice rising. "But this isn't just about my kids. It's about a system that lets this happen." He gestured to Dorothy, who nodded from her wheelchair, her eyes fierce. "I've activated an emergency compliance audit, effective immediately. SkyPulse Airlines is grounded." The crowd erupted, some cheering, others gasping. Kayla's jaw dropped. Grounding an airline was unheard of, a move only someone with Troy's power could pull. Greg stepped forward, his voice desperate. "Sir, it was a glitch in the system. We followed protocol," Mason scoffed, his recording still running. "A glitch doesn't target specific passengers," he said, loud enough for Priya's camera to catch. Troy's eyes narrowed. "You followed a protocol of prejudice," he said, "and it ends today." Lauren's hands shook as she tried to type, perhaps hoping to undo her actions, but Troy's aides were already interfacing with the counter's system, locking her out. The terminal screens flickered, displaying a Pinnacle Ventures alert, all SkyPulse flights suspended pending investigation. Passengers groaned, but many clapped, their support a lifeline for Kayla. She met Mason's gaze, a silent agreement passing between them. They'd started something bigger than themselves. Priya approached Troy, her voice professional but urgent. "Mr. Wright, I'm with the Seattle Post. Can you confirm this audit will address systemic bias?" Troy nodded, his expression unwavering. "Every employee, every policy, every incident, nothing's off limits. My wife, Sylvia, died because of this airline's failures. I won't let it happen again." Kayla's throat tightened at the mention of their mother, the pain raw even now. Priya's eyes softened, sensing the weight of his words. Dorothy wheeled forward, her voice steady. "Make it right. Mr. Wright, for Sylvia, for these kids, for all of us." Troy met her gaze, a silent promise exchanged. Kayla felt a spark of hope, her camera finally rising to her eye. She snapped a photo of her father, Dorothy, and the billboard, capturing the moment justice began to take shape. The security officers hesitated, their radios silent as Troy's authority overshadowed Greg's orders. The crowd's energy shifted, their phones now documenting a turning point. Mason leaned toward Kayla, whispering, "We're not just winning this fight, we're changing the game." His confidence was infectious. And Kayla nodded, her fear giving way to determination. The Seattle-Tacoma International Airport terminal was a cauldron of chaos and anticipation, the air thick with the weight of Troy Wright's words. SkyPulse Airlines. Grounded. Kayla Wright. 14 stood beside her brother Mason. 16, her camera now steady in her hands, capturing the stunned faces of Lauren Gibbs and Greg Sullivan. The digital billboard at Gate A12 still displayed the damning system logs, exposing their deliberate cancellation of the siblings' boarding passes. Priya Sharma, clutching Diego Lopez's USB drive of internal memos, moved through the crowd, her cameraman trailing, documenting the fallout. Dorothy Ellis, Priya's mother, watched from her wheelchair, her eyes fierce with pride. Troy Wright. 42 stood like a general, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the unraveling authority of SkyPulse's staff. His voice boomed, silencing the terminal's din. For 48 hours, every SkyPulse flight is halted. Every employee involved in this incident will face consequences, starting now. The crowd erupted, a mix of cheers and shocked murmurs. Kayla's heart pounded, a surge of vindication washing over her. She glanced at Mason, whose calm facade hid a glint of satisfaction as he continued recording on his phone. Lauren Gibbs, her face ashen, stammered from behind the counter. "Mr. Wright, I followed procedure." Her voice cracked, but Troy's gaze was unrelenting. "You followed prejudice," he said, gesturing to the billboard. "Your user ID canceled valid passes without cause. You're terminated, effective immediately." Lauren's hands shook, her polished demeanor crumbling as two of Troy's aides escorted her away, the crowd parting like a sea. Passengers clapped, their phones flashing, turning her exit into a viral spectacle. Greg Sullivan, sweat beading on his forehead, tried to salvage his position. "Sir, I was ensuring compliance. The system flagged their passes as—" Troy cut him off, his voice sharp. "Your account sealed the cancellation. Sullivan, you escalated this out of bias, not protocol." Greg's mouth opened, but no words came. Troy turned to his aides, who were already interfacing with SkyPulse's systems, pulling up employee records. "You're suspended pending investigation," Troy said. "Step aside." Greg's face contorted, a mix of rage and fear, as he retreated to the counter's edge, the crowd jeering. Kayla's camera clicked, capturing Greg's defeat, but her mind was on Diego Lopez, the security officer who'd slipped Priya the USB drive. His nervous glance toward the crowd told her he'd taken a risk, one that could change everything. Priya approached Troy, her voice steady. "Mr. Wright, these memos Diego provided document over 300 profiling cases in the past year, all buried by SkyPulse management. Will your audit address this?" Troy nodded, his jaw tight. "Every case will be reviewed. Those responsible will answer, to me and to the public." Diego, standing at the crowd's edge, met Kayla's eyes briefly, a silent acknowledgement of his role. Mason leaned toward her, whispering, "He's our wild card. Those memos are dynamite." Kayla nodded, her resolve hardening. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear, addressing Priya. "This isn't just about us," she said, her camera hanging at her side. "It's about my mom, Sylvia, who died because SkyPulse judged her. It's about everyone they've pushed aside." Priya's eyes softened, her camera lowering. "I'll make sure the world hears you, Kayla," she said, her tone a promise. The crowd quieted, sensing the weight of Kayla's words. Dorothy wheeled closer, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "You're Sylvia's daughter," she said, her eyes glistening. "She'd be proud of you, standing up like this." Kayla's throat tightened, the mention of her mother stirring a deep ache. Mason squeezed her shoulder, his own grief mirrored in his eyes. Their mother's loss had been a shadow over their lives, but now it was fuel for their fight. Troy's aides projected new data onto the billboard, a preliminary audit report, triggered by Troy's emergency protocol, showing patterns of bias in SkyPulse's passenger screening. The crowd murmured, some shouting in support, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Troy addressed them, his voice resolute. "This airline failed my family once. It won't happen again. We're tearing down every policy that enables this." His words were a vow, and Kayla felt a spark of hope, a belief that change was possible. Priya turned to Diego, her voice low but urgent. "You're risking your job for this. Why?" Diego's eyes flicked to Kayla and Mason, then back to Priya. "I've seen too many passengers treated like they're nothing. I couldn't stay quiet anymore." His honesty struck Kayla, and she snapped a photo of him, capturing his quiet courage. Mason nodded approvingly, his phone still recording, ensuring Diego's story would be heard. Greg, now sidelined, watched the crowd's support for the siblings, his defiance crumbling. He stepped forward, his voice hoarse. "I didn't mean for this," he said, his eyes darting between Troy and Kayla. "I lost my son to addiction 3 years ago. I've been angry, taking it out on others. I'm sorry." The admission stunned Kayla, a crack in Greg's armor she hadn't expected. Mason's expression softened slightly, but he didn't respond, his focus on the bigger fight. Troy's gaze lingered on Greg, weighing his words. "Your pain doesn't excuse your actions," he said, his tone firm but not cruel. "You'll answer for this, but you'll have a chance to make it right." The crowd was silent, the complexity of Greg's confession adding a new layer to the drama. Kayla's camera captured the moment, her lens finding truth in the tension. 3 weeks after the seismic showdown at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, the terminal at Gate A12 gleamed with new purpose. Gone were SkyPulse Airline's sterile blue banners, replaced by the vibrant purple and gold logo of Sylvia Air, a phoenix rising from the ashes of injustice. Kayla Wright, 14, stood before a freshly unveiled check-in counter, her camera capturing the sleek design, open layouts, no velvet ropes, and digital kiosks programmed for fairness. Mason Wright, 16, stood beside her, his phone displaying the beta version of SafePass, an app he'd built to let passengers report bias in real time. The air buzzed with optimism, a stark contrast to the chaos of their earlier fight. Sylvia Air's launch was a spectacle, drawing media, travelers, and activists to SeaTac. Troy Wright, 42, had overseen a radical overhaul, his vision for an airline rooted in equality taking shape. Kayla's photos from that fateful day, Lauren Gibbs's smug dismissal, Greg Sullivan's defeat, Diego Lopez's quiet courage, were now part of a terminal exhibit titled Faces of Flight. The images, displayed on digital screens, told a story of defiance and change, each frame a testament to their mother, Sylvia, whose death had sparked this revolution. Troy addressed the crowd, his voice steady but warm, amplified by speakers across the terminal. Sylvia Air isn't just a name, it's a promise. Every passenger, every journey, will be treated with respect. The crowd applauded, cameras flashing as Priya Sharma, the Seattle Post journalist, recorded the event, her mother, Dorothy Ellis, watching proudly from her wheelchair. Kayla's heart swelled, her camera clicking to capture her father's conviction. Mason nudged her, whispering, "We did this. Kayla, Mom would be proud." Diego Lopez, now head of Sylvia Air's ethical compliance team, stood nearby, his security uniform replaced by a sharp blazer. His leaked memos had exposed SkyPulse's systemic bias, paving the way for Troy's reforms. Diego's promotion was a beacon of hope, proof that one voice could shift the tide. He caught Kayla's eye, offering a small nod, and she snapped a photo, his quiet strength a new chapter in her exhibit. "You're a hero," she told him later, her voice earnest. Diego smiled, deflecting. Just doing what's right. Dorothy's influence was everywhere. Her advocacy after Sylvia's death had inspired the Ellis Accessibility Program, a Sylvia Air initiative ensuring seamless travel for disabled passengers. New counters were wheelchair accessible, and staff were trained in inclusive service. Dorothy wheeled through the terminal, her eyes bright as she tested a kiosk, her feedback shaping the program. "This is for everyone who's been left behind," she told Priya, who jotted down her words for a feature article. Kayla's camera captured their embrace, a moment of legacy and love. Mason's SafePass app was another game changer. Launched in beta, it allowed passengers to report incidents anonymously. With data feeding directly to Sylvia Air's compliance team, Mason demonstrated it to a group of reporters, his tech-savvy confidence shining. "No one should feel powerless," he said. Showing how the app flagged issues for immediate review, Priya tested it, submitting a mock report, and grinned when Diego's team responded in seconds. "This could set a standard," she said, her camera rolling. The terminal's transformation wasn't just cosmetic. Troy's audit had purged biased policies, replacing them with strict equity protocols. Staff underwent mandatory training, with Diego leading sessions on recognizing prejudice. Kayla attended one, her camera documenting employees' reactions, some resistant, others inspired. She noticed a familiar face in the back, Greg Sullivan, now a low-level service rep after his suspension. His presence surprised her, a reminder of his tearful confession about losing his son. Greg approached the siblings after the session, his posture humbled. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice rough. "I let my pain cloud my judgment. I'm learning to do better." Kayla hesitated, her anger still raw, but Mason nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. "Keep learning," Mason said, his tone firm but not unkind. Kayla snapped a photo of Greg, his sincerity a complex addition to her exhibit. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she saw a spark of change. Sylvia Air's first flights were set to depart that day, and the terminal buzzed with passengers eager to experience the new airline. Kayla and Mason boarded a ceremonial flight to New York, their original destination, now in first-class seats earned through their fight. As the plane taxied, Kayla looked out the window, her camera resting in her lap. "This is for Mom," she whispered. Feeling Sylvia's presence in the moment, Priya's article, published that morning, went viral, detailing the siblings' story and Sylvia Air's rebirth. It praised Troy's leadership, Diego's courage, and Dorothy's legacy. With Kayla's photos as a visual backbone, the piece called for other airlines to follow suit, sparking a global conversation. Mason's app trended online, with passengers sharing their own stories of bias, amplifying the movement. The crowd at SeaTac thinned as the day ended, but the energy lingered. Kayla and Mason stood before their exhibit, watching travelers pause to read Sylvia's story. Troy joined them, his eyes soft with pride. "You two started this," he said, his voice thick. "Sylvia's watching." Kayla's eyes glistened, her camera capturing one last photo. Their family, united in purpose, months after Sylvia Air's triumphant launch. The Seattle-Tacoma International Airport shimmered with purpose, its terminal a testament to a revolution sparked by two teens. Kayla Wright, now 15, stood before a towering mural at Gate A12, her camera capturing the vibrant tribute to her family. The artwork depicted Sylvia Wright, her mother, alongside Kayla, Mason, and Troy, their faces rendered in bold purples and golds, with the inscription, "Every journey deserves respect." Mason, 16, stood beside her, his phone displaying SafePass, now a global app with millions of downloads, empowering passengers to report bias instantly. The terminal buzzed with travelers, many pausing to admire the mural, their whispers a chorus of awe. Sylvia Air had become a beacon of change, its equity-driven model forcing competitors to rethink their practices. Airlines worldwide adopted similar protocols, inspired by Troy Wright's audacious grounding of Skypulse and the viral story of Kayla and Mason's fight. Troy, 42, had testified before Congress, advocating for the Carter Standard, a set of federal guidelines ensuring fair treatment in air travel, named after Sylvia's maiden name to honor her legacy. Kayla's photos from that fateful day, part of her Faces of Flight exhibit, now toured airports globally, each image a call to see humanity over prejudice. Kayla adjusted her camera, snapping a shot of a family posing by the mural. "This is bigger than us," she told Mason, her voice steady with pride. Mason nodded, his eyes scanning SafePass's analytics. "Over 10,000 reports this month, all leading to reforms. We're not just an airline. We're a movement." Their journey, once a personal battle, had reshaped an industry, proving that courage could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond SeaTac. Diego Lopez, now Sylvia Air's chief of ethical compliance, oversaw the airline's operations from a sleek office in the terminal. His leaked memos had been the spark, and his leadership ensured Sylvia Air's promise of equality was more than rhetoric. Diego mentored a new generation of staff, his training sessions blending data from SafePass with real-world stories, like Kayla's. He greeted the siblings at the mural, his smile warm. "Your mom's name is on every plane," he said, gesturing to a Sylvia Air jet visible through the terminal's glass. Kayla's camera clicked, capturing Diego's pride, a hero forged in the fight. Priya Sharma's journalism had fueled the movement, her Seattle Post series on Sylvia Air winning awards and sparking global debates. The scholarship Troy funded in her name had launched its first cohort, with young reporters tackling stories of injustice. Priya stood nearby, interviewing passengers for a follow-up piece, her cameraman capturing the mural's unveiling. She approached Kayla, her eyes bright. "Your photos changed how people see travel," she said. "They're teaching the world to look deeper." Kayla blushed, her camera a shield against the praise, but her heart soared. The Ellis Accessibility Program, inspired by Dorothy Ellis, had transformed Sylvia Air's service for disabled passengers. Ramps, braille kiosks, and trained staff were now standard. With other airlines scrambling to catch up, Dorothy's advocacy, rooted in her fight after Sylvia's death, had left a permanent mark. Kayla and Mason had visited her often, their bond a bridge between generations. Dorothy's stories of past protests filled Kayla with purpose, her camera documenting the elderly woman's wisdom. Greg Sullivan, now a baggage handler after his demotion, had stayed with Sylvia Air, attending every training session Diego offered. His apology to the siblings had been a turning point, and he'd since volunteered with the Accessibility Program, seeking redemption. Kayla spotted him near the mural, helping a wheelchair-bound passenger. She hesitated, then raised her camera, capturing his quiet effort. "He's trying," Mason said, his tone neutral. Kayla nodded, her anger softened by time. Though forgiveness remained a work in progress, Troy joined his children at the mural, his suit impeccable, but his expression soft. "You two made this happen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sylvia's legacy lives through you." Kayla's eyes glistened, her camera lowering as she hugged her father. Mason grinned, adding, "And through SafePass, we're just getting started." Their family, once fractured by loss, was now a force for change, united by purpose. Sylvia Air's impact reached beyond aviation, Schools taught the right story in civics classes, and Kayla's exhibit inspired art programs for youth. Mason's app partnered with advocacy groups, amplifying marginalized voices. The siblings, now recognized globally, spoke at conferences, their youth a powerful contrast to their influence. Kayla's latest photo series, Journeys Unseen, debuted at SeaTac, each image a story of resilience. Mason's keynote on tech ethics drew crowds, his vision for a fairer digital world resonating widely. As the sun set, casting golden light through the terminal's glass, Kayla and Mason stood before the mural, the crowd thinning. Priya approached, her expression somber yet proud. "I have one last story to share," she said, her voice trembling. Plot twist. "My mother, Dorothy, passed away last week. She told me her final wish was to see Sylvia Air soar. Her legacy lives in every accessible counter, every fair flight." Kayla's breath caught, tears spilling as she hugged Priya. Mason's jaw tightened, but he nodded, honoring Dorothy's impact. Priya handed Kayla a letter from Dorothy, written days before her death. "Keep fighting, Kayla," it read. "Your camera sees the truth. Sylvia's with you." Kayla clutched the letter, her resolve renewed. She snapped one final photo, the mural, glowing under twilight, a symbol of their victory. Mason opened SafePass, dedicating its latest update to Dorothy, ensuring her name would endure. This story ends, but the fight for justice doesn't. Hit like, share, and comment. How can we build a fairer world together? Join Kayla and Mason's movement. Let's make every journey count.